what I want to talk about today is why I left the left. So, if you've seen any of my interviews, you would know that I used to be a Democrat. And a lot of people wonder why. Like, isn't it a big 180 to go from supporting Bernie Sanders to supporting Trump? And the answer is simply no. And the reason why is because a lot of people don't understand how it works. I grew up in the black community. I grew up in what's considered to be black culture. I went to public school all of my life. And that's just how I grew up. And the one thing that's consistent in the majority of cases is we grow up being taught we have to be Democrat. It's literally a default setting. There's no not being a Democrat. It's simply a default setting for black people to grow up and be Democrats in the black community and in black culture. And anybody from the black community will tell you that. So it's generational. So when it's generational, the hardest thing to do is break that mental curse. So the question is how to break the mental curse. And how I did it personally is I used to be a liberal. I used to consider myself super pro-black, Marcus Garvey, all this, Black Panther, blah, blah, blah. Because how I was taught. My grandmother was a Black Panther, right? And I was taught I was oppressed. I was taught we were victims. I was taught we didn't get treated the same. I was taught we didn't have all of our rights. So as a Bernie supporter, the reason I supported Bernie, I didn't know nothing about politics. Nothing. The reason I supported Bernie is because he yelled, he sounded good, and he always catered to, he always talked about racism and this and this and this. And as a person who was taught that racism was real, I felt like, oh man, yeah, he knows, I used to argue with my daddy all the time because he was a Hillary supporter. He used to say Bernie was crazy, but in my mind, I'm like, no, he's loud, he's rowdy, this and this. And then I started arguing with people online. I used to argue with Republicans online, right? About, Bernie Sanders. And I always found myself attacking other people that were Republicans. And if you were black, you was Republican. Where I'm from, all the same names they call me now is what I used to call people. Coon, Uncle Tom, things of that nature. But I started realizing I didn't like doing that. Like, why couldn't I just continue? Why couldn't I stay on topic? So I said, you know what? I'm about to research. My whole purpose of researching was to out-argue Republicans online, right? But as I was researching, I'm like, because first I'm looking up, I'm on Bernie Sanders' website, looking at what he believes in, and off the rip, socially, I didn't agree with nothing. Literally not one thing. Because I grew up in the church, about this church, and a lot of stuff like that goes on now, we're not with. I never was with that. And I used to argue with the LGBT community online, even while I identified as a Democrat. So I'm looking up what Bernie Sanders is for, and I'm like, yo, I'm not with none of that. I don't agree with any of this. What are we talking about? The only thing I felt like I agreed with at the time was his, pro-black stances, but every single thing socially other than that, I was like, y'all don't agree with this. So I said, well, let me go to the economic side. My parents owned a beer store, and I was helping them run the beer store. So I know what it takes to start a business. I know what it takes to open a business. I know what these things take. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, so I always wanted to start things from scratch. So that's what looking at what he believed, economically, and it's almost like he hated rich people. It's like he was jealous of rich people. He just hated them. And then I'm like, hold on. I don't agree with any of this. I just simply don't agree. This is not how I was raised. These are not my values. So then I started looking up a few of the Republican candidates' platforms, right? I started with Ted Cruz. I'm like, now I align more with this because I like guns. You know what I'm saying? I'm confused. So I'm researching, I'm looking. And then I started watching the primaries. And Trump is just so entertaining. You can't take your eyes off of him. And as a person that grew up in a black community and I was a rapper, a popular one in North Carolina, I was performing at HBCUs and everything. As a person that come from that, I've never disliked Trump. I've never called Trump a racist. Trump was a part of culture. Trump was a positive part of culture. We all wanted to be like Trump. So, of course, I'm watching Trump like, this is cool, you know? And he wasn't politically correct. He just talked like a regular human being. He wasn't trying to really impress nobody. He was just trying to tell you what he believed in. And I feel like he was speaking to me and for me. And I don't know if y'all remember, but I don't know if it was a 100-day plan or like a 100 policy point plan. I don't remember, but I remember I read it. I read the whole thing, and I was like, I literally agree with like 85% of this, right? I started talking to my parents and telling them this, and they was like, no. My parents, like one day I'm going to have my dad and my mom on my podcast so they can tell y'all the type of arguments we would get in when I started realizing this. I didn't really go out, publicly yet with liking Trump. But, man, my parents, disagree with me. But I'm like, no, this is how I was raised. This is how y'all raised me for the most part. So this is what I believe. So I started posting, some of my conservative values on Facebook. And people were just like, Bryson, what are you doing? What are you turning into? So people started like going in on me. It used to be like it was like 20 people versus only me on my Facebook comments, because I've never been pro-choice. I've never been pro-choice. Never. You know what I'm saying? I've always been super religious. So it's like, I don't understand how, as a black person that grew up in a Baptist church, how we align with the left at all. So, I kept arguing with my parents. I kept, talking about my conservative values online, abortion, economics, and things of that nature. And I started becoming hated. I started becoming real controversial in my local area on Facebook. Then I bought a Trump hat. A regular Trump hat, right? And I took it home. I'm telling everybody I support Trump. I don't even care at this point. People already hate me, so hate me more. I support Trump. People started sending me articles of people getting beat up for wearing a Trump hat and saying that's going to be me next. People started sending me threats in my DMs that if I see you in the MAGA hat, this is going to happen. So I saw a video, because I used to just hunt for other, black conservatives, like that was Trump supporters, to watch. So I found King Face, I found Osig, I found Mikhail Crump, I found Candace Owens, Brandon Taylor. I'm like, okay, yeah. So King Face had this video with this big MAGA hat. He was like, do I look like somebody you can slap to somebody else? I'm like, I bought it instantly. Then I told everybody, this is how I'm coming. I support Trump, period. I started daring people for me to go places with the big MAGA hat on. They used to tell me to go, I bet you want to go to the mall Saturday night prime time. So I would go to the mall with the big MAGA hat on and just do it. Because at this point, people already hated me for my conservative values. So now I'm a Trump supporter. And now I'm going hard for Trump for the simple reason that you think you can stop me from liking somebody. You know what I'm saying? So I red pill myself by wanting to win arguments against Republicans. And what I ended up finding out is I align more with the Republican Party. And it's just simple. But I'm going to be honest, the GOP sucks with marketing. If you want to reach people like me, it's not going to be with a person that wears suits all the time, that talks politically correct and never uses slang on it. And nothing is wrong with that. I mean, if you want to reach people like me and people from where I grew up from, that's not going to cut it. You need people like me. You need people like King Face. You need people like Brandon Tatum. We can really change the world right now. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like we are a few steps behind where we should be, even though we're making ground. But I red pilled myself, and that's my story of why I left the left. And how I became a Trump supporter. And it was all out of curiosity and just doing my own research. So if any of you experience this or you know somebody that could benefit from watching this, please share it. And like I said, there's ways to support me below. But my name is Bryson Gray. This is why I left the left. Thank you for watching. Gang.